I want to start by saying this story isn't easy to share. It's raw, it's messy, and it deals with heavy themes: new motherhood, family struggles, betrayal, and choices that blur the lines of right and wrong. If topics like emotional intimacy, personal boundaries, or complex family dynamics make you uncomfortable, you might want to skip this one. But if you're here for a real human story about love, mistakes, and finding a way forward, stick with me. My name's Lauren Harper. I'm 42, and this is the story of how my life took a turn I never saw coming. If you told me a decade ago this would be my reality, I'd have laughed it off as some cruel joke. Yet here I am, sitting at my kitchen table, the morning light filtering through the blinds, a cold cup of coffee in my hands. I'm trying to make sense of the last 10 years, piecing together the moments that led me here. It's not a tidy story, but it's mine, and I'm ready to tell it. For the past 8 years, it's been just me and my son Ethan. Since the divorce, we've been a team, facing the world like it's us against everyone else. I still remember the day his father, Tom, walked out. Ethan was only 10, his small frame rigid as he stood by the window watching Tom's car disappear down the street. He didn't cry, not in front of me at least, but I saw it in the way his shoulders slumped, the way his eyes lingered on the empty driveway. It broke my heart. He'd wait there every day, hoping his dad would come back. And every day, I watched disappointment carve itself deeper into his face. That's when I made a promise to myself. I'd be Ethan's rock. I'd make sure he never felt alone, that he'd always have a family, even if it was just the two of us. That vow became my anchor, the thing that kept me going through sleepless nights and endless bills. Being a single mom wasn't easy. There were days I felt like I was drowning, juggling work, Ethan's school, and the weight of keeping us both afloat. But Ethan was my light. He was a quiet kid, thoughtful in a way that made him stand out. He'd help with chores without being asked, stacking dishes or folding laundry with this gentle focus that warmed my heart. I thought I was doing okay, holding it together for him. I thought we were okay. But as Ethan grew older, things started to shift. He turned 18 this year, and it hit me like a freight train. He wasn't my little boy anymore. He was on the cusp of manhood, caught in that awkward space between childhood and adulthood. And I could see him struggling to find his footing. He'd always been reserved, preferring the quiet of home over the chaos of teenage social life. He didn't have close friends, didn't go to parties or hang out at the mall like other kids his age. I'd ask him about it, worried he was lonely. But he'd just shrug and say, "I'm fine, Mom." I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I knew he wasn't. A mother always knows. About a month ago, everything changed. It was a quiet evening, just the two of us in the living room. Ethan was fidgeting, his hands twisting in his lap, his eyes fixed on the floor. Then out of nowhere, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mom, I need to tell you something." My stomach tightened. I could feel the weight of his words before he even said them. He confessed. He'd been using my things. My underwear. At first, I didn't understand. My mind scrambled to make sense of it. And when it clicked, it felt like the floor dropped out from under me. My heart raced. My palms went clammy, and a wave of shock and confusion crashed over me. I wanted to scream, to demand answers. But I looked at Ethan, his face flushed with shame, his shoulders hunched like he was trying to disappear, and I couldn't. He wasn't some stranger. He was my son, and he was hurting. I froze, my mind racing. What he'd done was wrong, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't about rebellion or malice. It was deeper. tied to emotions he couldn't articulate. I thought about sex education, something I'd always approached cautiously with Ethan. We'd had the basics, biology, consent, respect, but I hadn't delved into the emotional side of sexual development, the confusion that can come with adolescence. Experts say teenagers often grapple with their identities and desires in ways that feel overwhelming, especially without clear guidance. Maybe I'd failed him there, assuming he'd figure it out on his own. Instead of yelling, I made a choice I still question. I told Ethan he could continue, but only in front of me, so I could keep him safe and set boundaries. In return, I'd have the freedom to live my life, to bring people into our home without his judgment. It wasn't a solution I'd read in any parenting book. It was raw, impulsive, born out of desperation to protect him while reclaiming some control for myself. Ethan's eyes widened, his face pale as he processed my words. "You mean that's okay?" he asked, his voice trembling. I nodded, my throat tight. "But we have rules, Ethan. This is the deal." He didn't say much after that, just nodded and left the room. At first, it seemed to work. Ethan was calmer, less withdrawn. He didn't avoid me like he had before, and I felt a strange sense of relief, like we'd found a way to coexist. But as weeks passed, I noticed changes. Ethan sought me out more often, lingering in rooms. His eyes followed me in a way that felt different. I started to play into it, almost unconsciously, letting my sweater slip off my shoulder, leaving a button undone a little too long. It was a game, a way to feel powerful in a situation that felt increasingly out of control. I hated how much I liked it, but I couldn't stop. The line between us was blurring, and I didn't know how to pull it back. Then I met Daniel Carter. He was a friend of a friend, charming in a way that felt effortless. His laugh was warm, his presence grounding, and for the first time in years, I felt seen, not as a mom, but as Lauren. Daniel started coming over, first for coffee, then for late-night talks. One night, he stayed over. I didn't hide it from Ethan. That was part of our deal. But the next morning, when Ethan saw Daniel at the kitchen table, I saw the hurt in his eyes. His jaw tightened. His hands gripped his mug a little too hard. He didn't say anything, but the silence was deafening. Ethan's resentment grew. He snapped at me over small things, dirty dishes, forgotten errands. Then one evening, as Daniel and I laughed on the couch, Ethan stormed in, his face a storm of emotions, anger, betrayal, pain. "Do you even care about me anymore?" he shouted, his voice cracking. My heart stopped. Daniel froze, unsure what to do. I stood, chest tight, and tried to stay calm. "Ethan, of course I care. What's this about?" He took a step closer, his fists clenched. "You let this guy into our lives like I don't matter. You're so caught up in your freedom, you don't even see me." His words cut deep, each one a reminder of how I'd failed him. Daniel mumbled an excuse and left, but I barely noticed. All I could see was Ethan, trembling with emotions I had ignored for too long. That night, I sat alone, replaying his words. He was right. The deal wasn't just a boundary. It was a cage, trapping us both in a cycle of shame and dependence. I crossed lines I couldn't uncross, but I could choose to stop. The next day, I knocked on his door. He didn't answer at first, but I waited, my heart heavy. "Ethan, we need to talk," I said softly. The door creaked open. He stood there, eyes tired and guarded. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice breaking. "For everything. For not seeing how much this hurt you. We need help. Both of us." A week later, We sat in the office of Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a family therapist. I found online her calm demeanor put us at ease, even though we were both nervous. At first, we barely spoke. The weight of our story was too heavy to unpack. But Sarah had a way of asking questions that felt like invitations, not interrogations. Slowly, Ethan opened up. He talked about the loneliness he felt since the divorce, the confusion of our deal, the resentment that had built inside him. I listened, tears streaming down my face, as he voiced feelings I had ignored for years. I shared too, my guilt, my fear of losing him, my mistakes. Sarah guided us toward healthier boundaries, emphasizing that emotional and physical limits are acts of love, not control. She recommended resources on sexual health for Ethan, books on adolescent development, online courses about consent and self-awareness. For me, she suggested therapy to unpack my own choices and rebuild my confidence as a parent. Therapy wasn't a quick fix. Some days we left exhausted, questioning if we were making progress. Ethan struggled to let go of old habits, sometimes lashing out in frustration. But with Sarah's help, he found new outlets, journaling, a local boxing class where he could channel his energy. I saw him change, standing taller, speaking with more confidence. He even started hanging out with a few kids from the gym, building connections that weren't tied to me. For me, the hardest part was facing myself. Therapy forced me to confront my insecurities, the ways I'd let fear dictate my choices. I'd clung to Ethan, trying to fill the void Tom left, but I had suffocated us both. Letting go, trusting Ethan to find his own path. It was terrifying, but necessary. Months later, we sat on the porch watching the sunset. Ethan looked at me and said, "Thanks, Mom, for trying." It was simple, but it meant everything. I squeezed his hand, a quiet gesture that said more than words could. We're still healing, still learning. Mistakes don't vanish, but they don't have to define you. What matters is what you do next, how you grow, how you rebuild. Sex education taught me that open communication and clear boundaries are the foundation of healthy relationships, whether with your kids or yourself. I wish I'd understood that sooner, but I'm learning now. And so is Ethan. Our house feels lighter these days, like we're finally breathing again. Ethan's finding his way, spending time with friends, exploring his interests. I'm finding mine too. Learning to forgive myself and trust that will be okay. Life's messy, and there's no manual for this stuff. But we're here, still trying, still moving forward. If this story hit you, if it made you think about your own struggles or relationships, drop a comment below. Tell me, what would you do if your world turned upside down? How would you pick up the pieces? And if you want more real, raw stories like this, hit that subscribe button and join the Broken Vows family. Trust me, there's so much more to share. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next.